So longevity suffers from a lack of leadership. So you've got the Brian Johnsons of the world. I think Brian is doing really great work. But his slogan is don't die. He sent an email just last week. The goal is immortality by 2039. And so I think if you are insinuating, you're intimating, you're inferring that if you buy my stuff, you might not die, I think that's reckless, and I think it's dishonest, and I think it takes away from the great work that he's doing. And there are many in this camp of we're going to live to 150 or 200 or maybe we won't die. All that's fine if your motivations are pure, but when you have a commercial incentive and you're inferring that, I think you're taking advantage of people, and I think basically you're peeing in the pool.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Brent Franson, the CEO of Death Clock, a company that predicts when you're going to die using AI. And I wanted to talk to Brent to hear about the concept and where it came from, but also to get an insider's view on this movement around longevity from the Silicon Valley world, because it's definitely becoming a bigger and bigger movement, and a lot of these companies are leveraging AI to help them fuel their platforms. So we talk about that. We talk about Brent's entrepreneur journey and his mission to add 10 years of life to 100 million people's lives. And so we will have another podcast out early next week, so stay tuned for that. But for now, enjoy my conversation with Brent Franson. I'm excited to be here with Brent Franson, the CEO of Death Clock. Death Clock is an app that essentially tells you when you're going to die. And Brent, you guys came out with this app last spring. It caused a lot of waves, and I imagine that was part of the plan. But can you talk about those early days and how you came up with the concept for Death Clock?
Yeah, I mean, the concept is, so we trained an AI on 1,200 longevity studies to make a few predictions. But one, it predicts the day you're going to die based on your responses to these questions. And then two, it predicts how much longer it thinks you can live if you manage your health. And then you can make those predictions more accurate by adding blood tests and genetic data. And I mean, basically what we're building is an AI private doctor. It was a pivot. So we're a venture-backed Silicon Valley startup. We had raised money for a habit tracking app. So I grew up around a lot of addiction, and I became pretty convinced in my life that our healthcare system is just not very good at helping people change behavior. It's just not good at preventative health. And that's really obvious in addiction. And so we said, all right, we don't want to focus on addiction, but there's some interesting things we can learn there. We built this app and we spent $10 million on it, and it failed. And we had a little bit of money left. And we said, hey, we've got this crazy idea called Death Clock. It's either probably a really, really stupid idea to actually name it Death Clock. But if it's a good idea, it's a really good idea. It's just, 80% chance it's a terrible idea, but 20% chance like a really good idea. And it's gone really well. So we got lucky, and it's in that 20% bucket.
Would you attribute it to the provocative name, kind of like Liquid Death? You had this provocative name, and people go, "What is Death Clock?" And I do want to know, maybe I don't want to know when I'm going to die. But you made people think.
I think so. I think also it's refreshing having a death-centric health brand. I think all of the health products are either kind of woo and have weird names, or they're very health and happiness focused. And I think we've got a little bit of a dry sense of humor. We're like, yeah, we're all going to die. And it's just a question of when, and if we take care of our health, we can live longer, but we can take more of just a not take yourself too seriously approach to the way that we think about the product. I mean, one of the things that happens is we give you this little share card that's a save the date on the day that you're going to die. And so we're trying to, lighten it up a little bit and not take ourselves too seriously. And I think people have reacted well to that. I think we're sick of these fluffy health and happiness brands.
So from the get-go, when you started to build Death Clock, it was an AI agent or an AI app that would take in all these factors like your exercise, your overall health. And then you launched this new service this week, which I think includes testing for biomarkers. So it's maybe a service layer. Talk about the way you launched this week versus the original concept. I mean,
we were running out of money. And so we just wanted to test the concept to see if it would work, to see if we should raise more money around the concept. So the first thing we built was the AI that predicts when you're going to die. But our vision had always been the same. It was basically the thing that the number one factor that determines how long you're going to live is how much money you have. And this is like the 99th percentile live longer than the 98th percentile all the way down. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But the number one reason is access to better health. Basically, the more money you have, the more you can opt out of the healthcare system, the insurance pay system, and you can just cash pay for good preventative health, because our healthcare system is good reactively, but it's not good preventatively and proactively. And so we had a thesis from the very beginning that in a post-AI world, somebody's going to build the operating system for managing preventative health. So basically, it used to be that your doctor had all your health data and your doctor would tell you what to do, and you didn't really know anything about your own health. You just trusted your doctor. Now it's the opposite. You have a bunch of data on your own health and you tell your doctor what to do, because your doctor related to preventative health, because your doctor just doesn't have time. And so we felt like, okay, this platform, but you need this like operating system layer, this layer that organizes the data and basically helps you be your own doctor. And we felt, okay, this operating system is going to do three things. It's going to help you get all of your health data in one place, number one. Number two, it's going to be really good at an analysis and basically creating a roadmap, a personalized plan based on that data. And then number three, it's going to make it easy for you to action that data. And one of the things we realized people need is they just need blood tests. And so we went and integrated with about 5,000 Quest and LabCorp locations. So you can bring your own blood tests to Death Clock, or you can get it through us, and all subscriptions include it. But that was part of but it's not really a service layer, because we don't do the blood testing. There's two big labs. They do
It's a monetization to a certain extent play, which makes sense. It's very aligned with what you're building.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about building apps is people don't really value apps in and of themselves. Like basically people expect that apps are free. And so we'll go spend $100 at BJ's for burgers and pizza and not think about it, but $100 on an app is really crazy. So we also felt, hey, we should include a blood test in every subscription to just make the value that we're providing a little bit more real. And we want to be a platform. We don't want to just be an app. And so it's also some strategic value there.
I'm pretty familiar with the world of these next generation personalized nutrition services like Viome, where you send in saliva, blood, fecal testing, and then they give you kind of a personalized kind of, hey, this is what you should be eating. They also have a vitamin and supplement subscription model. How focused are you on the food stuff? Because I do think, and you outline this on your website, food is such a big part of the overall health plan. How much do you line people and direct people around what their food and diet should be?
So basically what happens is you can add all of the data you have on yourself to Death Clock, and the more data that it has in the Life Lab, once you're in the app, we call it the Life Lab, the more data that the Life Lab has, the more comprehensive and accurate your longevity. So whenever you have data, you have this big report that updates. And that report recommends cancer screenings and supplements and medication, things to talk to your doctor about. And it also touches on, there's a big section on diet. So sleep, diet, exercise, very, very important. They're very central to Life Lab. On something like microbiome testing specifically, I think the science is still out. Well, so the jury is back, and we know that the microbiome is very, very important. The diversity of the microbiome really matters. It's important for just systemically for health. It's unclear whether or not there's a lot of action yet that we can take on from those microbiome tests. So most of the docs who study this would say, hey, there's some people are selling microbiome tests, but we don't really know what to do with the results of the tests yet. And so fiber, of course, important, and fiber is recommended a lot in the Life Lab and in our longevity reports. But if you've taken a microbiome test, I've done Viome, I've done them all, you add that data to Death Clock, and Death Clock will interpret it. But we're fairly conservative clinically. There's still TBD as to what you do with the results of a microbiome test.
So you pointed out that health is so closely aligned with income. And I've always felt like that the U.S. health system is broken. And I have been pretty excited about the possibility of AI, and particularly like essentially your personal AI nutritionist or doctor. Is this where, obviously you have a vested interest in this, but is this where the healthcare system is going? Do you think maybe you may ultimately see the U.S. government get on board with this? Say, hey, the first layer of interaction you should have, because you probably can't get into a doctor, it's hard to pay for, would be like an AI agent that tells you what's going on?
I hope the government, it's not the government tends to be bad at everything, but I think, look, yeah. My opinion is that I think we have a very good healthcare system as it relates to reactive care. There's nowhere in the world I'd rather get hit by a car or diagnosed with cancer. And does it have its problems? Of course it does. But in terms of if you show up at your local emergency room in most places, you're going to get reasonable care. It might take you longer than you want, might be a little bit more expensive than you want, but the quality of the reactive care is pretty good. Now, our healthcare system is, as you intimate, terrible at preventative health. And so we've got this epidemic of chronic disease, obesity, diabetes, heart disease. And so, yes, I think that's going to be excised from the healthcare system. I think our healthcare system is not set up to solve that problem in terms of the way that the dollars flow. And so what we're going to do, we as consumers are going to take responsibility for this, and we're going to cash pay for a lot of it. So I don't think the government will do it. I don't think the healthcare system will do it. I think what we're seeing is people are saying, hey, preventative health really matters. My doctor, my primary care physician's not good at it. The healthcare system's not good at it, but it matters to me. So I'm going to take responsibility for it myself, and I'm going to have a part in that. So that can be the Life Lab on Death Clock. You know, there are other companies, blood testing companies, wearable companies. Maybe they end up being the partner for some people. Hims and Hers are doing a lot of work here. The company that started selling, erectile dysfunction pills. So, but I think I think the private sector is going to have a set of solutions that consumers are going to buy directly to solve this gap that the healthcare system has.
Clearly, longevity has become a bigger and bigger topic within within Silicon Valley, right? So you're a part of that. Where do you see this going? Is this something where we're going to continue to see venture funding flow into the space because there's continuing to be an aging of the population, the healthcare system's broken? Is this a space that just continues to be hot?
I think the venture dollars are going to follow the demand, and there's a shocking amount of demand. So we asked our users, and this is a couple 100,000 users who we asked, what is your longevity budget annual? And to give you a sense of these users, they're pretty middle of the road. About 5% of our users have a household income above 500K. 50% are 75K or below. And then, the other 45% are between 75K and 500K, with most of them between 75K and 250. So it's pretty kind of typical household incomes, maybe slightly higher than average. And the weighted average response to the longevity budget question was $8,000. 37% of our users said greater than $15,000 a year was their budget, and 77 had a budget of greater than $1,000. I struggle to believe the $8,000 number, but with that weighted average, let's say 50 million people are interested in this. There's about 400 billion, I think, in dollars that are available to be spent in longevity in the US that are not being spent they're unallocated basically. And so I think if
what's
anything,
the pie chart? What's the pie chart? Right. Is it like weight loss? Is it supplements? What is making up that $8,000?
Yeah, it's weight loss, supplements, screenings, so full body scans, liquid biopsies, CT scans, CCTA scans. It's devices, so the scales that'll show you your body composition. It's the Apple Watches, et cetera, the glucose monitors. It's across the board in terms of the pie chart. But there's a lot of money people are willing to spend. And this used to be in healthcare, we assumed nobody has money to spend out of pocket. They'll only do it if it's covered by insurance. And we're seeing actually that's not true anymore, which is great.
How did you get into this, Brent? What did you do before, you had this failed app, you're now running Death Clock, which is getting lots of attention, but what is your background? What did you do before all that?
I'm just an entrepreneur. So I started my first company when I was in high school. And then I moved to Palo Alto. I moved from Colorado to Silicon Valley. And I was on the founding team of a company called Reputation.com, which is a venture-backed business. And we got lucky there. There were 5 of us who started that company, and we were all in our early to mid-20s. And it just worked really well. We raised, $150 million. And by the time I left, there were 400 people there. And it's a unicorn today. It's a $1 billion plus business. Today, I then was the non-founding CEO. So I took the CEO role at another venture-backed company, and we raised about $50 million there. And then it was acquired by WeWork. WeWork at the time was the most valuable private company in the world when they bought us, and then they imploded. That's a whole nother story. And so I'm just a Silicon Valley venture-backed entrepreneur. And then after I got out of WeWork, I had basically some golden handcuffs. I had a deal there where they pay to stay. I knew I wanted to devote my life to building businesses and technology that help people improve their health.
Is it a vision that's largely focused on the U.S. initially, or do you see maybe working with, we do an event every year in Japan. Japan is a very health-focused, but also very old society in terms of how old average age is. Are you looking at Asia? Are you looking at Europe as well?
So we never thought about international, but we've done very well internationally. And so I think we've been number one in health and fitness in the App Store in 12 different countries, and we never had an international strategy. So I think there's two things that are clear from this. One is nobody in the world has any money except for iPhone users in the US. That's what you realize having an iPhone. We have Android, iPhone, and we have web, but it's basically the vast majority of our revenue is iPhone users in the US. But the second thing you realize is this is an international problem. Everybody in the world is waking up to the importance of preventative health, to managing it on their own. They want tools to do that. The concept of predicting when you're going to die, it resonates in Romania and Australia and Italy and in the US and in Japan and number one in South Korea for a time. So, it resonates internationally. I just worry about, from a revenue perspective, very honestly, about the tolerance to pay for something like Death Clock in Europe is very low. Europeans just don't have that much money. I mean, it's been eye-opening. So I hate to be a kind of cutthroat capitalist like that, but it's been an interesting learning.
You got to run a business. Now, what does a unicorn look like in longevity? You've seen another unicorn in another vertical grow. I think this is an emergent space that it's going to start to see like its own Amazons at some point or its own Googles. What does that look like?
I don't know. I mean, we're trying, our vision is to help 100 million people live 10 years longer. So it's at 1 billion years to humanity. And we say that not because we want to, it's some ridiculous Silicon Valley slogan, which it kind of is. Even I roll my eyes a little bit saying it. But the reason we articulate it that way is because we want to be really hyper scalable. In longevity, most of the businesses don't have the possibility of becoming unicorns because it's really they're products and services for wealthy people. Hey, if you want to spend $1,000 a month on a private doctor, or you want to spend $500 a year out of pocket on blood testing, then we've got a solution for you. And for us, we think that's fine. I don't begrudge anybody paying $100,000 a year for a private doctor, which many wealthy people do. But that's not going to work for the rest of us. And so we want to build products that scale where everybody can have access at a reasonable price point. And so I think the unicorns in longevity that get created are the ones who are not just solving the problem where really rich people are willing to spend a lot of money. They're creating solutions where the tech does the heavy lifting and that are available to everybody at reasonable cost. That's how you build really valuable businesses. Back to this in terms of wealthy, so wealthy people get private docs. That's the best healthcare. And so that's what we're building. We're building a platform that allows anybody to get private doc quality, kind of a private doc quality roadmap at a fraction of the cost. And we think AI can do that really well.
Yeah, I think democratizing through apps and technology is probably really the only chance we have to make it get beyond that, like you said, that 95% on the very end of the bell curve.
Yeah, and again, I think it's if I put on my cold capitalist hat, that's the way you build a business, the biggest business. The biggest businesses are not the boutique grocery stores in really wealthy neighborhoods that have one or two locations and the prices of everything is really high. It's Whole Foods, it's Walmart. And so you want to be accessible to as many people as you possibly can. That's how you help the highest number of people. And then that's how you build a really valuable business. But we let the number of people we help lead what we're doing. And then the value of the business will come if we're able to do that. If we can help a lot of people live anywhere close to 100 million people live 10 years longer, then the value of the business will come and our investors will get paid.
I love that you are focused on helping a billion people live 10 years longer and not the live forever crowd. Because I think the live forever idea is kind of funny and people realize that's not realistic. I think what you're saying is more a realistic tagline, quite honestly.
Well, and that live forever stuff is huckster crap. So longevity suffers from a lack of leadership. So you've got the Brian Johnsons of the world. I think Brian is doing really great work. But his slogan is don't die. He sent an email just last week. The goal is immortality by 2039. And so I think if you are insinuating, you're intimating, you're inferring that if you buy my stuff, you might not die, I think that's reckless, and I think it's dishonest, and I think it takes away from the great work that he's doing. And there are many in this camp of we're going to live to 150 or 200 or maybe we won't die. All that's fine if your motivations are pure. But when you have a commercial incentive and you're inferring that, I think you're taking advantage of people. And I think basically you're peeing in the pool. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got Peter Attia. Until a couple of days ago, Peter Attia was the really, I thought the shining example of the way to do it. He's focused on the incremental decade, on being healthier to get an extra 10 good years. He's very, very aligned with the science, but the guy's all over the Epstein files and he's a narcissistic sociopath. And so, we've got these issues
that's not great.
of the people who are doing it well. And look, I'm not trying to get in the whole Epstein files conversation, but it's like, we got the guy who was supposed to be the guy who's doing great work. He gets tainted in this way that's really annoying. The other most visible guy is selling immortality. That's the huckster go-to for the last 2,000 years. I'm not making a religious comment there, but this selling immortality is like, it's one of the oldest frauds in the book. And I think it gives everybody in the space a bad name.
You have a company that I think ultimately provides a service that could get rolled into something like an Apple Health, or maybe into like something Amazon would want to offer, because obviously Amazon is building out health services as well. Do you think the big platform giants may ultimately kind of encroach on your space? Obviously, maybe you'd want to maybe get acquired by them, but where do you think they're going?
I think they should already own this space, and they've dropped the ball. Apple Health has been around for a long time. Google has a health product. It's been around for a long time, and they own the operating system. There is no greater strategic advantage, and they've dropped the ball. There's room for a death clock to exist because they've dropped the ball. Now, I do personally believe that Apple is so far behind in the AI race that health might be the way that they say, hey, this is how we can catch up really quickly. Healthcare spending is 25% of GDP. It's about $5 trillion against a $20 trillion GDP in the US. And so if I'm Tim Cook and I'm sitting and saying, man, we really got to catch up in AI, I probably would try to do it on health. I think that's probably the highest probability path that's aligned with that business. And so, but as a startup founder, you can't sit around thinking about these big giants eating your lunch. Maybe they do eat our lunch someday. And then we also don't spend a lot of time thinking about, do you get acquired? And if so, who acquires you? Build a great business and the rest will fall into place.
Great final words to end on. Brent Franson with Death Clock, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
All right. Have you went and downloaded the app yet? The Death Clock app? I'm going to go do it right now, try it out, and I guess learn when I'm going to die. More seriously, I think the app and the goal is to help us all live longer. This is definitely a movement that is getting a lot of traction broadly within Silicon Valley and also in the world of food and nutrition. So it's an area that we'll definitely be focusing on more closely in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. All right, folks, as I said, we'll have more podcasts early next week after the Super Bowl. Go Seahawks. We'll talk to y'all soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. You'll find more content like this on thespoon.tech/podcasts.